every once in a while, although recently I feel like it's many onces in a while, I read a news headline that stops me cold. Usually, if you know me, you know that I read the news or I start it around 5 in the morning. So when this happens, my day is pretty much spoken for before it starts. The other day, during my morning doom scroll, I saw a headline that we now have reporting on the first confirmed death due to the reversal of Roe. It took more than 2 years to be publicly reported, and I'm sure many of you read about it as well, so I don't need to explain to you the rage fury that engulfed me as I read about Amber Nicole Thurman, the young mother who died in an operating room in Georgia as routine life-saving care was delayed after Georgia implemented their 6-week abortion ban. Let me be very, very clear. It is not deniable that reversing Roe killed her, which is why I have some serious choice words for people who say they are pro-life and yet support abortion bans that, as we have been saying forever, will kill women. And super extra choice words for the lower than low people who say that this death was justified, that it is the proper punishment for ending an unwanted pregnancy. Can you imagine? Actually, you know what? No, I don't have any words for those people. This death was officially deemed preventable. Doctors in states with abortion bans now hesitate to perform routine procedures like a D&C because, though they can be simple life-saving procedures, they can also be used to perform an abortion. Doctors are scared for their own careers and their own futures because barbaric laws have wiggled their way into women's health care. Now we have proof that women are dying because of that. Oh boy, I am outraged, truly. This is Choice Words. I'm Samantha Bee. My guest today is actor Jon Cryer, who you love from projects like Pretty in Pink and 2.5 Men. I love how he has been inspired to use his immense platform for social good and really enjoyed talking to him about his becoming a more active participant in democracy. So take a listen and make good choices.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Okay, are you in New York right now? Are you elsewhere? Are you?
I am in Los Angeles,
You're in Los
in
Angeles.
my basement.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Well, I'm in New York, so you're definitely going to hear ambulances and screaming and dogs and drilling.
Actual crimes going on as we speak. That's ideal. I think.
we do have someone in our neighborhood who calls the police every single day and is always on Citizen, and it's always really the wildest crimes. It's like a raccoon came into a woman's house with a baseball bat and killed her family, and you're like, wait.
Now, okay, I would dismiss that, except a raccoon stole my fortune cookie out of my DoorDash just a week and a half ago.
What?
And I actually went back and got the security camera footage because that little mofo just he was very specific. God bless him. He just reached right into the plastic bag, pulled out one tiny thing,
Delicately
pounced upon it, and ate it on my porch as if, oh my God, just in my face.
Oh my God. Did he read his fortune? Was he like unraveling with his tiny fingers? He was like, you will come into money. Interesting. Oh my God. Raccoons
They're clever little evil creatures, and they're cute though. So we like them because they're cute, but they are evil. They're like 15, 16 pounds of pure evil.
Pure evil. This is not podcast. It's not about me. It is about you, but I am about to tell a story about myself.
Perfect.
Yep. Which is that when I was growing up, we had a cat who had kittens, and then a chimney sweep. That's not what people.
I know.
A chimney
Dick Van
technician.
Dyke.
Yeah. A chimney technician came to our house and was like, oh, my whole car is filled with baby raccoons. And my mom was like, maybe this cat will nurse them. And she did.
That's the first thing that comes to your mom's mind?
Oh,
is,
yes,
hey,
correct.
Some
Yes.
interspecies collaboration.
Why don't we
here.
why don't we see what happens if we have like a wet nurse for these raccoon babies? And I want to tell you something. It is believable to me that raccoon did read and personally, like, kind of psychologically digest its fortune, because those raccoons were so advanced. Like, they accelerated past the kittens on such an incredible timeline.
They were super raccoons.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, within 2 days, they were like,
Mutant.
we are fully sentient and we are on the ceiling now, swinging from your lamps. It is a pleasure to be talking to you today. We have business to attend to.
Yes,
But-
very important things.
Okay. I want to talk to you first. We don't usually start every episode by talking about the raccoons that we nursed to full health.
It's a very specific podcast. That's I wanted to hit a very specific niche, brand-wise for my podcast, and it's only raccoon stories and just pretty much the nursing raccoon stories.
Yeah, Raccoon Experiences with Samantha Bee is how we're just changing the name of the podcast. Okay, it is choice words. I love to talk about choices big and small that made an impact in your life. But my first question is usually, and it is an important question.
Yeah.
Are you good at making choices and decisions for yourself? Are you a decisive human being? Are you?
I am not. I overthink things all the time.
Love it.
I think my career is the answer to that question, both the good and the bad. The interesting thing about being an actor is that you kind of have to surf your opportunities. You might. If you take one thing, it means you can't do another. And also just to be in a position where you're getting offered jobs is just so ridiculously lucky at all. You're already in this infinitesimally small percentage of people lucky enough that there's a market for what you want to do in any way. I am not decisive. I go back and forth. I agonize, and I've made super dumb choices. There's always those stories for actors of, that great role you could have had, and thankfully I don't have many of those. Not a lot of, Tom Selleck turning down Indiana Jones, for me. But like the closest thing I have to that is I got a script from my agent on a Friday afternoon. I was flying on Saturday morning back to New York from Los Angeles. And he said, this is an emergency. They can only meet you on Sunday. So you'd have to read it on the plane, prepare when you get home, and be ready to perform on Sunday morning. I was like, oh, okay, sure. So he hands me the script, and it's an independent movie. And just to explain, independent movies are thrilling for actors because we get paid almost nothing and usually have to work in horrible conditions, and then the movie never comes out.
100%. You have to change your wardrobe in the bathroom of a Starbucks.
Exactly.
And the day is 18 hours long minimally.
Yes, and there's no food, and you're putting up with, they hired their brother to be the actor opposite you or whatever.
100%,
So independents are not what actors are always looking for. But anyway, I got this script for this independent movie. I'm reading it, and it's like weird because it has these long monologues, and it goes backwards and forwards in time, and you can't. And I was like, what is this even? I'm not even sure, and just profane monologue. I mean, just like things that just make you go, oh Jesus, really? So I get into New York on Saturday night. It's late, and I realize I have almost no time to prepare for this thing. And I'm really nervous because it's like I'm going to go in kind of unprepared to meet with the director and the producers. So the next morning, I'm just getting more and more anxious about it's like I don't have time to prepare for this. And my phone rings, and it's my sister. Okay. And my sister's mother-in-law is ill. And my sister has to go out to Long Island to take care of her, and my sister's asking me, can you take care of my daughter, my niece?
Yeah.
and I go, bing, this is a perfect excuse to get out of this audition.
Yes.
So I call up the producer and I say, I am so sorry, but my sister's mom got sick, and I have to take care of my niece, and it's just I can't. I'm such a wonderful uncle and caring family member that I'm sorry I have to blow off your audition.
Prioritize family.
Exactly. See, I'm a giver. That's
situations.
who I am.
Yep.
And he said, oh, no, bring your niece. And I was like, I can't.
No.
This thing is just foul, and she's going to sit on my lap while I do this thing. She's 2. This is not appropriate for an audition situation. And the guy was just so adamant. He was like, no, bring her. You'll see. It'll be great. I was like, no, I'm sorry, I can't. And I begged off.
Okay.
Well, cut to a year later, and there's a Hollywood Reporter headline about the Sundance phenomena of this movie that is called Reservoir Dogs.
Oh my God.
And it is lighting the festival on fire. And I was supposed to audition for Mr. Pink, the Steve Buscemi role. And I blew it off in order to hang out with my niece because I'm such a good guy. I was so anxious.
Yes.
But what's funny about that, and I did realize that actually I think a cool life lesson out of that, certainly for actors, is I love that movie. And Steve Buscemi was fucking great in that movie. And honestly, I don't think I would have been better, certainly. There's so many roles that I was in the mix for and didn't happen.
Right.
And, there's a famous story of me not doing Chandler in Friends. But again, really that's a story of a guy auditioning and not getting it. That's all it is.
Right. Right.
But it has morphed into this cultural thing. Oh, he could have been Chandler. He could have been, dating Julia Roberts or whatever. Who knows?
I feel that everyone who's in the performing arts has their own kind of version of that at different scales. You know what I mean? Where you have to go, am I the type of person who can wrestle with envy and put it to rest? Can I experience it? Can I put it away? Am I able to, how do I kind of square all this rejection, balance it with success? How do you process that stuff? Is it fast? Because it always happens. It doesn't matter what level of show business you're at. Forever and ever and ever, people will want you. They won't want you. You don't know why. There's no logic. Everyone thinks you can just walk in a room and make a project happen, and it's never true for anyone.
No. So many people say, John, you should do a movie with Tom Hanks. It's yes, I should.
That would be
You're
awesome.
Right. I've heard he's good.
Do you know him? Does he want that also?
Exactly. Do you understand the thousands of things that have to come together in order for it to be me and Tom Hanks doing a movie together? You know what? Years ago, somebody said to me, hey, there's enough success for everybody, which actually, which changed things for me a lot. It made me feel less like we're all fighting for a single piece of the pie,
right.
That we're all going to be on these journeys. And, by the way, some of us might not be able to make a living in show business. That's what I tell people when they ask me about this. I say, if you want to pursue this, great. If you can enjoy how dumb this business is, you're going to have a great time because it's dumb and it's not fair. And if you get lucky, there'll be a market for what you do and you can make a living at it. But there's a million ways to pursue it, not for a living. You can always write yourself. You can always write that screenplay that you love and see what happens. Who knows? You can do community theater. You can, you can create your own theater company. You can, you can make things yourself. That doesn't mean the world will pay you for it.
Yes.
But you can pursue it as an artist. Absolutely.
100%. You can express yourself in a way. You can express yourself however you like perpetually. And if you kind of see it with no promise of financial reward, or you don't see it with any kind of it's hard to make it a career, but you can always, it is an art form also.
Yeah. And again, I always did enjoy how dumb the business is. I always, because it's just got these crazy roller coaster peak and valleys and things, and nothing makes sense, and people succeed at incredibly unlikely, you go, how on earth did that work? But it worked. So I love the personalities in it. I find that when I was tiny, when I was probably 5 or 6 years old, my parents are both performers, or both actors, and my mom's also a playwright. And my dad was doing the Fantastics off Broadway in New York, and I was just backstage, and I just realized I love all these people. I love these actors. I love how that they tell wonderful stories and laugh way too loud, and are vain and ridiculous and walk around in their underwear, and I just love being a part of this.
Right.
Had a similar feeling in the 2.5 Men writers' room. That was it was just so much fun to be there.
Right.
That I thought, okay, this is the feeling that this is why I do this,
And I do think it's also helpful to never give yourself a backup plan of any kind.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like if you give yourself a backup plan, you're going to take it.
Yes.
That is a guarantee.
Well, it's true. I mean, when I was 18, I got offered my first understudy role in New York City, and I was also enrolled in NYU at the same time. This is another choice. I had auditioned for the NYU acting program and got accepted, astonishingly. And somehow, in retrospect, I realized NYU is one of the most expensive schools in America.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And in retrospect, I have no idea how my mother was going to pay for that, or how I was going to. But at the time, I got offered a job, and I said I can either go to college or I can take this leap. Right. And, and it was not, I was probably not the long-term wisest thing to do, but again, I had to do the thing that I loved.
It worked out. I mean, listen, like, it's funny because you're so known to literally everyone. Like, you have been in like culture-defining, decade-defining projects. Can you walk the streets of do people stop you? And people stop you. I bet they stop you less in New York than if you went to a shopping mall in LA. But do I have it wrong?
Yes. Thankfully, I have no hair now.
Okay.
So because I have a different look, usually when people hear my voice, they go, "Oh, 2.5 Men." Oh, yep. There we go. I still get a lot of Ducky. Although it's funny, I was just in Europe visiting my son who lives in Germany now, and 2.5 Men is huge in Germany, but they dub it. So people don't recognize, they look at me and they go, that voice is not your voice. So they don't recognize me from the voice.
That is so, I'm just picturing you walking down the street in Frankfurt or something, and people are just like, what is happening right now?
Well, actually, yeah, in the Frankfurt airport, the police recognized me. They were like, Alan, willkommen, and they were very nice to me. And it's funny because the kid who does Angus's dubbing in German sounds like Augustus Gloop from Willy Wonka.
I love chocolate.
Yes. So, but the guy who does Alan is great. The German Alan guy is fantastic.
Again, it's all like scale, because like my husband is in Hot Tub Time Machine and Hot Tub Time Machine too. And we were at a fall fair once, and the people working the carnival rides were like, "Oh my God!" And he was like, "What's wrong?" Like, we were all like, "Oh, something terrible is happening.
Something has gone horribly wrong."
And they were so excited because on their carnival tour buses, carnival trailers where they go from place to place, they had exactly two DVDs in the DVR player, and one of them was Hot Time Machine 2. So you know what I mean?
2, not the first one.
Not the first one.
They wanted to, get on that horse as it was galloping. They were just
100%.
No need for the thing that sets it all up.
No. We don't want
I'm on board.
We don't want to do. We accept that this is the world.
Yes.
This is the world. The world exists. Okay. It's funny because people would shout Ducky to you. right? Like they must.
Yes, and actually, it's one of the things I learned very early on,
Yeah.
actually from Christopher Reeve
Uh-huh.
I did the Superman movie that nobody
Yes.
admits ever happened. It's called Superman 4: The Quest for Peace,
I
and it's a
admit it.
mess. It is.
I I really like hearing you talk about it. You're
Oh.
so you're so open about it. I
I
appreciate it.
well, it was a formative experience for me because
Yeah.
I was still a young guy,
Hmm.
and I loved, I was 14 when the first Superman movie came out, so
Yeah.
it meant a great deal to me. It was like what the magic of movies was, and
Right.
that I was going to participate in that was just this amazing thing. And they had reassembled the whole cast from the first one. They'd gotten Margot Kidder back, and Jackie Cooper, and
Right.
I mean, it was ridiculous. And the script was actually terrific. Chris Reeve had written the story to the script, and so it was really an exciting relaunch of the
Yeah.
franchise, as it were. And I was going to be doing all my scenes with Gene Hackman, who's
Oh,
also good.
whatever.
By the way,
I've heard of him.
you've heard of him. But then we get on the set, and that movie was actually made by the Cannon Company, which were these Israeli movie producers who were famous for doing schlock things like Chuck Norris and Delta Force and stuff like that. But this was going to be their
Oh,
bid at respectability. But unfortunately, they did not possess respectability. They just could. It just like wasn't. It was just part of their bones. They couldn't do it.
okay.
They took most of the budget from Superman 4 and put
Okay.
it toward He-Man and the Masters of the Universe that they were making at the same time with Dolph Lundgren.
I mean, also a classic.
Yes, also a
A
classic.
classic.
But unfortunately, so we ran out of money. So Superman 4, as released, is currently like unfinished. I mean, the reason that the special effects are so terrible, and there's just these huge narrative gaps is because they just ran out of money. And but the interesting thing that I learned while I was doing it, well, I learned a lot of things, but like get paid up front.
Yeah.
But I was really surprised and moved by how much Chris Reeve, he understood the obligation of playing that character. He
Mm.
understood that meant a great deal to people, that it meant more than just, a role that he was playing for cash.
Yeah.
And so he understood that bond you have with the audience is really valuable, and you have to respect it. You have to understand that that's an incredibly precious thing that you're incredibly lucky to have.
Right.
I mean, because he didn't, he obviously did a lot of roles after Superman, but he understood that he'll always be Superman to a lot
Hmm.
of people. And I thought that was really cool, and I'll always be Ducky.
Do you ever think about this like adolescence is so different now. It's so deeply different now with social media. Do you ever wonder what adolescence would have been like for you if you'd had TikTok? I'm sure that I would be living alone on an island, exiled from humanity.
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Ooh,
Yeah, I don't think I could have handled it. I mean, I was a little overweight growing up, not and when I was 14, and I went to theater camp. Although
right.
having gone to theater camp brought out something in me, so I might have been doing very overt and ridiculous TikToks by the time I was 16 or 17.
You'd be like, this is
That
my
that
brand. This is
Yes,
who
it might
I
have been
am.
show tunes and
Oh. Okay. I'm doing a hard turn. I'm doing a hard ass turn because you were at the DNC.
yes, I was at the DNC.
Did you enjoy
Because
yourself?
I work with a group called the Creative Coalition, which
Hmm.
generally advocates on behalf of the National Endowment for the Arts,
Hmm.
which is a steep climb because most of these legislators do not want to hear about it. So they every now and then they import me to Washington D.C. and truck me around to various, usually Republicans, because those are the ones who won't vote for it.
Of course.
And they try to make a charming case for why America's culture is worth funding. Because people forget that America is its culture. That is
Yes,
what when you think of being an American, you're thinking of culture, of the culture
of
that
course.
America is. It's pop culture, it's theater, it's
Hmm.
it's art, it's all of those things. And it's also not about subsidizing people so that they can become media stars. It's it's because the people who aren't media stars are also creating the culture that is America.
Right.
It's for the people who can't make money at it.
Yes, yes.
It's for stuff that is harder to fund. At any rate, they offered me a chance to go to the DNC, and I thought, wow, this is history, And my
Yeah.
son is 15, has suddenly gotten interested in politics.
Ooh.
So it was really wonderful. Actually, we got to the DNC on the second day, and we had floor passes, which is kind of exciting. You
That's
get down
exciting.
on
Yeah.
the floor, but the problem is if you're not a delegate and you're on the floor, you have no place to sit. You got nothing.
True.
You have no ticket. So we were. My wife was there as well, and my son, and we were all trying to get in. And first of all, there was Tim Kaine, former VP nominee, and they wouldn't let him in because he didn't have the right pass. And I was like, "Are you kidding me? He was the nominee for vice
You know what?
president."
There's no dignity.
There's
It
no dignity.
doesn't. Yeah, across
To
the
his
board.
credit, he actually handled it gracefully. He had a couple of aides who were a little less graceful about it, understandably. Again, so I take my son out onto the floor for the first time, and it's literally the last 3 states to officially nominate Kamala Harris, and so we were there at that electric moment when she had enough votes, and it was all official, and it was just like the place was on fire. It's become such a vessel of hope now.
Yes.
It went from people, all of whom, were had enormous respect for what the president is currently doing, has done an astonishing legislative record. Everybody respects that and, has an enormous amount of affection for President Biden. But we all had, part of the job is communicating. And he was clearly starting to have a very hard time communicating. So that burst of just excitement and hope was just palpable. It's and I think interestingly, a lot of people for some reason have been underestimating Kamala Harris for years. A lot of people were like, "Oh no, we gotta have an open primary because that's da 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 da," and it's not gonna and it's like, she's the vice president. There's somebody right there.
Right.
And she's just risen to the occasion in an astonishing way.
Have you always been a very political person? I mean, you grew up in New York. It's kind of like it's kind of in your blood.
Yeah.
If you live here a little bit.
Yeah, I grew up in the 80s and, had to live through Reagan, who's been, just held up as this, amazing American figure, which I had a lot of issues with Reagan back in the day.
Yes.
Time has given me some perspective on some of them. There's some things I do admire that he did, but I still have a lot of huge problems with him. And I actually did a podcast called Lawyers, Guns, and Money recently that is about Iran-Contra, which has just disappeared from the national consciousness.
Gone.
Yeah.
Right? Gone.
Absolutely gone. But so many of the major players of it, Bill Barr, and they're still around. Oliver North is still around. Still, it sort of was the first use of where Republicans were using, far right militias to sort of be a part of American foreign policy, to basically get their using militia members to get what they wanted, which is a bad precedent.
Right.
I think. But the Iran-Contra, goes back to, World War II, when the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the CIA, started working with organized crime in Europe against Hitler. And to some degree with organized crime figures here who were fighting Nazi subversion in America. So, we have a history of doing very complicated things.
Complicated is such a generous way to characterize it. But I do remember, those hearings were seminal for me as a kid, watching them in Canada.
Oh my God! First of all, I did not know you were Canadian. That changes this whole conversation.
Everything's over. Computer shut.
But so that must be interesting because for me the problem was I felt like everybody got away with it at the time, and so we had Nixon who got away with Watergate. Then we had Reagan get away with this, and it was just like, when are we going to hold presidents to some kind of accountability?
I don't think we have quite nailed it.
Not just yet.
Not just yet. It actually feels farther away from possibility now.
But now, as a Canadian, I mean, people have said being Canadian is like living above a meth lab, because the United States
funny.
is just so bonkers.
Yeah.
But was that how you felt?
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, we share so many cultural products. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yes.
like right across the board. So the news that we watched was really like the news from Buffalo, out of Cheektowaga, so there is a sharing that takes place. There's it's a really permeable cultural border.
Yes, there is a shared cultural history.
Right? It's not exactly the same. The perspective is different. Some of the conditions for living, I think, are a little more compatible with human life.
Yes.
Let's say that. But it affords you a little bit of distance to go, I don't think that it was right what you did there. I don't think that was a good thing. I don't like Reagan very much. She doesn't seem to align with our values here. We all kind of watched those hearings, and my mom was very political and she hated Ronald Reagan, and my grandmother was very political and she loved Nancy Reagan and thought she was a beautiful, just like an icon, just a great snappy dresser.
Mm-hmm.
Had the same hairdo, and I loved my grandmother so much. So it was the source of many fights when I was 11, I guess.
You're just tearing into your grandma
Just
at 11.
everybody's
I don't want a cookie. I don't want a cookie.
Yeah,
don't give me a cookie. Let's talk about Ronald Reagan.
How can you say that? Oliver North is lying. And then I moved here many decades ago, and he's the host of his own show. So that's great. You know what I mean?
Great.
Accountability is not the strong suit, but I love to. It was fun to work here in political satire and bring that kind of distance to it, because I love the United States absolutely 100%. I'm a citizen now. It's all fine. It's all legal.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm going to talk loudly because that's what I do to people from foreign countries.
Foreign tongues.
Yes, we eat hamburgers here.
Hamburgers. But it is, it was a little bit like coming here was a little bit like, it was interesting to have full conversations with people who grew up within the United States educational system, and how we just have a different perspective on. I was actually just telling someone this morning that one of the first things I did that really offended people at the Daily Show was sit in a meeting of all these very Ivy League educated writers. And I was not confident. I was very nervous. I was very Canadian about it. And I said something about American imperialism, and everybody in the room was like, what did you just say? And I was like, how, just no one comfortably used that vocabulary in the. So I did bring a kind of a different, because in Canada we have so much fear that you're all going to steal all our water, and we goddamn know it's going to happen.
Hey, if we need it, come on. We should be allowed to steal it.
AI needs a lot of fresh water. We need a lot of coolant so that we can make the best AI porn. Okay?
That's really what this was all about.
Come on. You don't want to think that you live in a world where all the technology was its origin story is in just improving porn.
Yeah.
But here we are.
But virtually every media advance from the Gutenberg, Bible. It's like they did Gutenberg Bible and then porn. That everything. It drove the VCR. It drove. Every time there is a technological leap, porn is the first big seller of it.
The first big seller, and the innovators, really.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. No. For the first thing, they did the Gutenberg Bible. They did porn, and they did a guide to witches. That was very, very popular right after printing presses were.
This is that's now that's a
Says it
sentence
all.
after my own heart. Okay, you are extremely outspoken. I love how political you are. It's actually very nice to talk to, when a high profile person is very politically engaged and who actually uses your profile for good, as opposed to Scott Baio. And this is not about trashing Scott Baio, but he does suck.
I don't know Scott Baio. I've never met him.
Okay.
I wish him the best. There's enough
Yes.
success out there for everybody. I'm saying it.
Yep.
No, I get why people, at least online and in social media, sometimes resent when actors do it because, as an actor,
Sure.
you're a media personality and you get a following. And that feels like an unequal power. It feels like a power imbalance. And they're like, who are you? Why should there be a power imbalance between you and me? And they're right. There shouldn't be. They're
Right.
absolutely right on that. And, and so I do try to be aware of that. And I try to temper my political stuff with mercy. Just in an understanding, because I have people I differ with politically in my family.
Yep.
And I try to think, okay, how would I say that to a person in my family who,
Right.
because, we agree on so many more things. I know this is a cliche, but we agree on a lot more things than we disagree on. And I feel like, there is a compassionate way to make
Right.
the same case. You don't have to just rub everybody's face in it and be cruel. I try to criticize elected Republicans as opposed to rank and
Right.
file Republicans,
Yes.
because these elected Republicans ostensibly should know better.
Yes, and I also feel like if you are an elected official or you are seeking to be an elected official, that means that you are effectively trying to make the rules that govern all of our lives. And therefore, you are subject to whatever the citizens would like to express to you. And
Yes, that's you put yourself forward that way, and politically, I'm willing to talk to people about stuff,
Right.
and engage if people want to. It's interesting on social media. People are shocked when you're not just trying to have that viral moment.
Right.
It's like here's a gotcha. It's like no, let's
Right.
talk about this.
yeah. You're very you're very good with it. You're very, very good with it. Your voice is actually I think very clear and strong and kind
Well, thank you.
and good to
I should be
have.
Canadian.
Red-
That's what I really need to be Canadian.
You can visit. It'll be fine. If you want, I'll adopt you. And
Oh,
yeah, you can try it out. The healthcare is very good.
Yes,
That part is
yes,
nice.
I have experienced the healthcare because I've shot up there
Yeah.
fairly, and I love that that it's not a concern. They consider it silly that you're worried about having to spend a lot of money for medical care. It's like that.
Yes.
Why would anybody have to spend a lot of money?
It
for
is
medical
like
care?
casting off. I always liken it to an invisible backpack that all Americans wear. Like there is a heavy burden to the knowledge that one day your whatever disease or condition you develop could actually bankrupt you and your children. It's
Yes.
a perpetual concern, which sometimes I see like my Canadian relatives bellyache about the system because it is imperfect. And I'm
Yes.
like, oh, honey, you have no idea. I'm like, oh, I know there's like worries, but you just
Yes.
need to live on the other side of the border for 15 minutes and you'll feel great. You're going to feel a
Yes.
lot better about this. I have such a complicated relationship with X, formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
Do you think that anything about it is salvageable?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
still have a lot of people that I enjoy conversing with on it, so I still
Right.
post there pretty regularly.
Yeah.
I also when I want to reach an audience of Trump supporters, I post there because they've been prioritized. They're
Right.
clearly the audience that Elon Musk wants to have
Yep.
there. So if I want to say something to them, I'll say, "Hey, Trump supporters." Very often, I'll in very chipper things, and of course,
Yeah.
no matter how nice and polite I am, and how much it's backed up by actual facts and and all that stuff, the withering anger that I am. And by the way, one of the nice things about being in show business is you get used to people not digging your stuff.
That's true. Yes, you get a bit of a callus. You develop
You get a bit of a callus. I mean, I remember I was in line in 1987 for a movie, and I heard people saying, "Oh, hey, there's a new Jon Cryer movie out." And I heard another person say, "I hate Jon Cryer," and I was just like, "Oh my goodness."
I'm right here.
But honestly, I was like, you know what? There are actors whose work I'm not a huge fan of, so that's fair.
Yeah.
If they don't, again, I'm lucky to have the opportunity to put it out there, and that helps with social media because it's like people just. I put out a message and it's like, you know what, I try to be sure that the messages I put out are what I want to put out. I try to not act rashly. Every now and then I slip up and go, "Oh, that was poorly worded," or whatever.
Sure.
And every now and then I amplify something that I later find out was just fucking wrong,
Right.
and that I try to avoid that as well. It's funny because Elon Musk's big, priority when he first bought it was, I got to get rid of the bots. And the bots have flourished like never before.
Oh my! It's all bots.
It's all, yes, and so yeah. I don't know if it can be salvaged. I'm enjoying. I'm on Threads as well, and Blue Sky, and a lot of great comedy people went to Blue Sky, which I think is very cool.
Right.
And Threads is starting to get better about news, so I'm enjoying that.
The funniest part of it, really, to me, is that a lot of the people who probably respond to you on X and they're like, "Fuck yeah, you privileged fuck." If they saw you at a picnic, they'd be like, "It's Ducky."
Yeah, no, I've had a few of those. I've had a few people who say, "I don't agree with you."
Right.
Every now and then, there's a few people that I've conversed with that will argue with me in good faith, and that's just invaluable. And I do enjoy that, actually. I think that's fair. I mean, it's not wildly popular. I don't have millions of followers. I have less than 400,000. So I'm sure there are people who are better at the much more combative style, and they get millions of followers because people like the fights. But that's not necessarily why I'm there.
Right. I like it. Discourse. Imagine people talking to each other. It almost feels so pastoral. Okay, tell me about, I want to talk about the man who calculated death.
Oh, thank you for
So
talking
tell me about what is the origin of there's more and more narrative podcasts, which I'm really into that.
I love narrative podcasts, and unfortunately,
I
they're in a tough place now because the talk show podcasts, like what we're doing right now,
Yes.
are what is very popular with Spotify and all the people in Wondery.
Yes.
They all want their talk show podcasts, but they're a little kind of iffy on narrative podcasts.
I know, but I
which
love
is a shame.
them.
But I love them too. I'm absolutely addicted to them. The Man Who Calculated Death sort of fell into my lap in this weird way. It's a podcast I produced. I'm not a part of it, unlike Lawyers, Guns, and Money, which I actually was the narrator of. This thing fell in my lap because a friend of my wife's, we were having dinner, and her friend drops this bombshell. At one point she says, anyway, my grandfather was one of Hitler's most important scientists. Anyway, and then changes the subject. I was like, I'm sorry, we're going to have to back up and investigate that a little bit. Turns out this woman is a woman named Suzanne Rico. She used to be an anchor woman here at CBS News in Los Angeles. And she's a gifted journalist. She, as her mother was dying, her mother confessed to her that she had written a memoir about her traumatic childhood in Germany. And she said, I'm not going to be alive long enough to finish this. Can you finish this memoir for me? And Suzanne was, of course, taken aback. And she and her sister, Stephanie, were like, how do you finish someone else's memoir?
Yeah.
And there had always been this sort of reticence to look into their mother's childhood in Germany because her father was a Nazi. Her father was a Nazi scientist named Robert Lesser, who worked on one of Hitler's most secret weapons programs. He invented the V1, which was the first cruise missile, the thing that terrorized London for all that time.
Oh,
And so he wasn't just a Nazi. He was one of the highest level Nazis. So Suzanne felt like she needed to look back into her family history. So she went back to Germany and finally really examined the life of this man who had affected her family's trajectory. And there had been this mystery that had always bedeviled Suzanne's mother, in that there was a mysterious bombing that had killed her mother. Suzanne's grandmother, the wife of Robert Lesser, was killed. And so Suzanne went back to Germany to investigate how that happened and who did it. And the astonishing thing was, Suzanne, in the course of making this podcast, solved it. She solved the mystery and found out who did it.
I cannot subscribe fast enough.
And so the first season is her solving this mystery. The second season, which she hasn't actually recorded yet, but she's mapped all out, is her family got brought to the United States in Operation Paperclip.
Oh, wow.
And so her grandfather, who had been a Nazi working for Adolf Hitler, ended up working with Wernher von Braun on our space program. So this German family got plunked in the middle of Alabama and had to make a new life for themselves, working on, so they went from, the arguably the lowest horror that the Earth has experienced, that human history has experienced, to working on, what many consider man's greatest achievement.
This sounds fantastic. Oh my God, what a pleasure talking to you. I mean, this was really fun.
The pleasure was mine. I've enjoyed your stuff. I've actually appeared on your show, which was great fun.
Ages ago.
Yes. We did a Christmas
Christmas
eggnog
song
carol.
Yep. And I'm so grateful to you for that. It was so fun. I should share it. I should actually re-share it.
Absolutely.
It is so
the nog.
good.
The problem was that the actual eggnog that was there on the set that day was vegan eggnog, which I don't recommend.
That's disgusting
to anyone.
That is, actually, they're like, no, it's just like regular eggnog, but with chickpea juice. And you're like, that's technically edible. Is not what I'm looking for in an eggnog.
No, not my nog.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. It was really, really a pleasure.
That was Jon Cryer, and I had no choice but to look up one thing. He jokes about being a seat filler at the DNC, but do they have actual seat fillers? No, they don't. They don't need to. They just rely on people like Jon. They just have Jon. Thank you so much, Jon, and thank you, listener, for joining us. I'm Samantha Bee. See you next week for some more Choice Words. Thank you for listening to Choice Words, which was created by and is hosted by me. The show is produced by Tzvia Baron-Reinstein with editing and additional producing by Josh Richmond. We're distributed by Lemonada Media, and you can find me at RealSamB on X and Instagram. Follow Choice Words wherever you get your podcasts or listen ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership.